welcome back to Climate Conversations. Dr. Khandekar, you're an expert on monsoons, and we've recently heard media stories that there's terrible flooding and very extreme heat waves that precede the monsoons. Is this out of the norm? Can you comment?
Well, I think I have always felt that global climate is a huge jigsaw puzzle, and you have to put all these pieces: Indian monsoon, El Nino, its reverse or its counterpart called La Nina, and its impact on global climate and on Indian monsoon or broader scale Asian monsoon. I have a endemic interest in the summer monsoon over India. As I grew there, I have seen several summer monsoons, some very wet, some dry, some extremely dry. The heaviest, wettest monsoon I recall was 1961. And in a 200-year data set of excellent monsoon data set, 1961 still stands out as the wettest monsoon in a 200 year.
Well, can you give us an idea of how the monsoon works? What is a monsoon? I think most of us here in Canada probably have a very foggy notion that it's some kind of a rainy winter, and that's about it, the opposite of our snowy ones. Can you explain?
Now, you might ask, why study monsoon? Yes, good question. I think Indian monsoon, and by extension South Asian monsoon, impacts anywhere from 3 to 4 billion people on the earth.
3 to 4 billion people. Well, that's a figure that most of us don't really think about over here in the West with our paltry millions. So how is the population affected by these monsoons?
For these people living in Southeast Asia, say from Pakistan to Bangladesh to India to Indonesia to Vietnam to Sri Lanka to Myanmar to Philippines, monsoon, summer monsoon, also winter monsoon is the only climate element year by year by year. And if a monsoon fails miserably, that is, very little monsoon rains occur during the primary months of June to September, the crops fail, and it has a severe impact on the economy of these countries.
So without the monsoons, the crops are doomed. But we hear of terrible flooding that goes along with them. What's up with that?
On the contrary, if the monsoon is good, even to the extent of being a flood monsoon, it does help crop production. Agreed, it produces some damage due to extensive flooding, as it happened in September of 2014, where parts of Kashmir in northern India were severely flooded because of some heavy rains, localized rain, and that led to drowning of several dozen people, unfortunately. And once again, the media started to point out human activity to these floods. As a result, I wrote a report on the Indian monsoon floods and droughts.
So with Dr. Ho-Sung Lee, now from South Korea, do you think that that means that climate change matters and policy will shift to that part of the world?
Scientists in the United States or Canada or in Europe, because I think the monsoon climate and the monsoon evolution and its progress impacts up to 3 billion people. I feel that their views on the climate change should be taken into account definitely. And right now, when we talk about the CO2 reduction and all that, it so happens in an interesting manner that the developing countries, China, India, Brazil, and Mexico together have a carbon footprint which is almost 60% of the total carbon dioxide or CO2 emission. So unless these countries willingly agree to reduce CO2 emissions, I think we have to develop an alternative and cost-effective way of tackling future climate change. I and many scientists like myself have been promoting the idea of a vigorous, comprehensive climate adaptation strategies. It can work. We develop proper strategies, you see, develop early warning systems of an oncoming severe heat wave or extensive flooding or an extensive drought and so on. And we can minimize its impact on the society. Reducing CO2 will do nothing to climate.
Dr. Khandekar, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Michelle Sterling for Friends of Science. Tune in again for Climate Conversations.